The judge expected chaos the moment the Joker entered the courtroom, but not silence. Yet, that's what happened. A suffocating, unnatural silence, like the air itself was waiting for his next move. He didn't laugh. He didn't scream. He didn't even look at the audience packed tightly behind the glass barrier. He simply raised his cuffed hands and asked for a blank sheet of paper, like it was the most ordinary request in the world. No one understood why the guards froze, why the judge hesitated, or why an uneasy tremor passed through the room the moment the paper touched his fingers. But the Joker did. His eyes said it all. He had come here with a purpose, sharp, calculated, and far more dangerous than anything the prosecution claimed. He drew slowly, every line purposeful, every stroke heavy, like it carried a memory the world had tried to bury. And when he finally handed the picture to the judge, the man's hand shook before he even looked at it. The moment the judge's eyes landed on the drawing, his breath caught, his jaw stiffened, and his gaze shot to the Joker as if he'd just seen proof of a crime that should have remained hidden forever. The room didn't know it yet, but the trial had already shifted. Power had already changed hands, and the Joker had just begun. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, because every story we tell pulls you deeper into the truth most people try to ignore. The judge stared at the drawing as if it were a confession carved directly into his conscience. His lips parted slightly, failing to form even the simplest words. The courtroom waited, uneasy, confused, on edge. Only the Joker remained still, his posture relaxed, almost polite, like he was the only person who knew the ending to a story no one else had realized had begun. The prosecutor stepped forward, trying to mask his irritation. "Your Honor, whatever this stunt is, should not delay the hearing." His voice cracked despite his attempt to appear in control. "The defendant is manipulating the room. That piece of paper means nothing." But the judge didn't respond. His fingers tightened around the edges of the drawing, crumpling it slightly. The prosecutor moved closer, leaning in. "Your Honor," he whispered. The judge finally inhaled, slowly, unevenly, and turned the drawing face down on the bench. "Proceed," he said, though his voice was barely audible. It was a command only in form, not in strength. The Joker smiled faintly, just enough to show he had noticed. The prosecutor straightened and cleared his throat, regaining his rhythm. "Ladies and gentlemen, the man before you is not a vigilante, not a misunderstood figure. He is a criminal with a history of violence and manipulation. Today, we will prove." The Joker cut in quietly, his voice soft, yet impossible to ignore. "Your Honor, may I speak?" The prosecutor slammed a hand on the table. "Absolutely not. This is not." But the judge raised a trembling hand. "Let him." The room stirred, surprised. The prosecutor turned, stunned. "Your Honor, I said," the judge repeated, forcing steadiness he didn't have. "Let him speak." The Joker's grin widened as though someone had finally remembered the script. He stepped forward, cuffs glinting under the courtroom lights, and lifted his chin just enough to meet the judge's eyes, but not the rest of the room. "Thank you." No humor, no theatrics. His voice carried a gravity no one associated with him. "I didn't draw that picture to intimidate," he began. "I drew it because he needed to see it." He nodded toward the judge. Sometimes truth is easier to digest when it's sketched rather than spoken. Whispers rippled through the room. The judge swallowed hard. His breathing grew shallow. The Joker continued, his tone steady, disturbingly calm. "You see, everyone in this room thinks I did something unforgivable, something violent, something senseless." He tilted his head slightly. "But what if the real crime was committed long before I ever stepped foot in this courthouse?" The prosecutor scoffed. "This is exactly why you shouldn't be allowed to talk." "Your Honor, I'm curious," Joker said, turning to the prosecutor with a smile that wasn't a smile at all. "Have you ever looked a guilty man in the eyes and watched him pretend he's innocent? It's fascinating." The prosecutor opened his mouth, but the Joker returned to the judge before he could speak. Every step he took felt choreographed, light, slow, deliberate. "The drawing," he said softly, "is a memory, not mine, his." The judge flinched, lips tightening, chest rising with a sudden sharp inhale. "And memories," Joker added, "never lie." The prosecutor slammed his folder shut in frustration. "Your Honor, I demand." But before he could finish, the Joker's voice cut through the room again, low and precise. "Should we tell them, Your Honor? Or would you prefer I describe what happened that night myself?" The judge froze. The audience leaned forward unconsciously. The prosecutor looked between them, confused, irritated, then suddenly suspicious. "What night?" he snapped. The Joker didn't answer. Instead, he slowly turned toward the gallery, rows of strangers who had come to witness justice unfold, not expecting justice to tremble in its own seat. He studied them calmly, like an artist examining blank canvases. "Everyone wants a villain," he said. "Someone to point at, someone to blame." His eyes moved from face to face. "I'm comfortable in that role. It's familiar. But here's the interesting part. Sometimes a villain is just the only one willing to say what everyone else is too afraid to admit." He lifted his cuffed hand slightly. "And sometimes a drawing says it better." Silence thickened, the kind that squeezes the air out of your lungs. The judge, pale and distant, finally cleared his throat. "We will continue this discussion after recess." A murmur ran through the room. Recess this early was unheard of. Panic flickered across the prosecutor's face. The bailiff stepped forward, preparing to escort the Joker away. But as they approached, the Joker leaned toward the judge, just enough for only him to hear. His voice was barely a whisper, yet the judge recoiled like he'd been struck. The Joker straightened, and for the first time that morning, he laughed. Not loud, not wild, not unhinged, just knowing. The judge bolted up from his seat. "Court is adjourned," he said, nearly stumbling as he left the bench. The prosecutor shouted after him, "Your Honor, what did he say?" But the judge didn't answer. He walked out without a glance, clutching the drawing so tightly it tore at the edges. Only when the judge disappeared behind the chamber doors did the Joker's smile fade into something darker, deeper, almost sorrowful. "Round one," he whispered. The guards dragged him away, but no one noticed. The judge's hands were shaking not because of fear, but because he recognized the face in the drawing, and it wasn't the Joker's. The judge locked himself inside his chambers with a force that rattled the doorframe. He didn't care that cameras were still rolling outside or that the hallway was packed with reporters. He didn't even care that the prosecutor was shouting his name from down the corridor. His only focus was the drawing in his trembling hands. He laid it flat on his desk, smoothing the torn edges, trying to breathe through the rising panic clawing at his throat. It wasn't just a sketch. It was a memory, one he had buried so deep that even he questioned if it had truly happened. But the Joker had captured it with disturbing accuracy. A small boy, a dimly lit stairwell, a shadow towering over him. Not the Joker's silhouette, his own. The judge pressed his hands to his face, shaking his head, whispering to himself as if he could argue the drawing into being a lie. No, he couldn't have known. He couldn't. A knock at the chamber door startled him. "Judge Hanley," the prosecutor's voice called. "We need to talk, now." The judge wiped his face and opened the door just enough to reveal part of his expression. The prosecutor's brows furrowed instantly. "You look pale. What the hell did he say to you?" Hanley shook his head. "Nothing. He's trying to unsettle the court. That's all." "That's all?" The prosecutor scoffed. "You ended the session after 5 minutes. That's not all." The judge stepped out, trying to regain some command over his own posture. "This case is highly sensitive. I won't let his theatrics dictate the pace of the trial. We will reconvene after lunch." "After lunch?" the prosecutor repeated, disbelief sharpening his tone. "We haven't even begun opening statements. He's manipulating you." The judge's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. He simply walked away, leaving the prosecutor staring after him, uncertain whether he should be angry or worried. Meanwhile, the Joker was escorted down the hallway toward the holding area. His chains rattled softly as he walked, but he wore a look of calm amusement, as though the courthouse hallway were a stage he'd personally designed. A guard lingered behind him, muttering under his breath. "You think you're funny, don't you?" The Joker turned his head just slightly. "Not funny, honest. There's a difference." The guard scoffed. "You're not honest. You're insane." Joker tilted his head thoughtfully. "Insane people don't draw memories that don't belong to them." The guard paused, unsettled but trying to mask it. "What did you show the judge?" A reminder, the Joker said simply, of who the real criminal in the room is. Before the guard could respond, the bailiffs pushed him into the holding area, a cold, narrow room lit by flickering fluorescent lights. They cuffed him to a metal bench and left without speaking. The door slammed shut behind them. For a moment, the Joker just sat there, listening. He could hear distant voices, attorneys, reporters, guards exchanging nervous theories about the drawing. It was working. The uncertainty, the fear, the cracks forming beneath the polished surface of the courtroom. He leaned back, smiling faintly. "Truth makes people far more uncomfortable than lies," he whispered. Time passed slowly. The lunch break stretched longer than it ever had in this courthouse. Whatever chaos the judge was dealing with internally, it was delaying the entire system, something the Joker had anticipated, something he needed. Finally, the heavy doors swung open. A young woman in a gray suit entered, holding a notebook to her chest. She looked too nervous to be a lawyer, too soft-spoken to be a guard. When she approached, her voice trembled slightly. "Mr. Joker, my name is Clara. I'm a legal assistant assigned to observe the case. The judge requested that I speak with you." "Requested?" Joker raised an eyebrow. "That's surprising. He seems busy digesting old memories." Clara stiffened. "He wanted to know if you intend to disrupt the trial." "Disrupt?" Joker chuckled under his breath. "Clara, I'm not here to disrupt anything. I'm here to finish something." Her eyes flickered with confusion. "Finish what?" He leaned forward, the chain on his wrist tightening. "Tell me, Clara, do you believe this place actually serves justice, or does it simply bury the crimes of the powerful under paper and ceremony?" She hesitated. He could see it, the uncertainty, the frustration she had tried to hide. "You don't have to answer," he said softly. "Your silence does the talking for you." Clara swallowed hard. "The judge wants you to keep your statements relevant. If you accuse him again—" "Accuse?" Joker smirked. "Clara, everything I say is a confession, just not mine." She stepped back slightly, unsettled. "The judge will reconvene in 20 minutes. I suggest you prepare." The Joker nodded politely. "Tell him I'll behave." Clara left quickly, closing the door behind her, almost as if afraid to stay in the same room with him longer than necessary. The Joker lowered his head, eyes focused on the concrete floor. His breath slowed. His expression shifted, no longer playful, no longer mocking. Something colder, heavier, more deliberate settled over him. He whispered to himself, "Round two." When the guards finally returned to escort him back into the courtroom, the energy had completely changed. People whispered to each other urgently. Reporters scribbled notes faster than they could think. Even the public spectators looked confused, sensing something had shifted behind closed doors. And then the judge walked in. His face was pale. His hands shook slightly as he adjusted his robe. The courtroom fell silent, not out of respect, but because everyone felt something was wrong. When he sat down, his voice cracked as he spoke the most unexpected words of the day. "Before we proceed, I need to make a personal statement regarding the defendant." The prosecutor's head snapped up. "Your Honor, what?" But the judge lifted the drawing onto the bench, and the entire room realized the statement wasn't about the Joker at all. It was about himself. For a long moment, the judge didn't speak. He simply held the drawing in front of him, his fingers trembling as if the paper burned. The courtroom leaned forward without meaning to, an unconscious reaction to the tension thickening the air. Even the Joker seemed unusually still, watching the man with the calm patience of someone who had orchestrated every second of this moment. Finally, Judge Hanley cleared his throat, though the sound came out dry and uncertain. "Before we continue with the proceedings," he said, "I want to address something privately and transparently." The prosecutor rose immediately. "Your Honor, this is irregular." "Irregular doesn't matter right now," the judge snapped, surprising even himself with the sharpness of his tone. "Sit down." The prosecutor sat, stunned. The judge looked down at the drawing, then slowly turned it face up on the bench for the court to see. Gasps stirred through the audience. The sketch was crude yet hauntingly precise. Shadows carved with heavy strokes, fear etched into the eyes of a small child standing at the bottom of a stairwell. But the most disturbing part was the man standing above him, half shrouded in darkness, except for the face. The face was unmistakably Judge Hanley's. He swallowed hard. This, his voice cracked. He tried again. This was drawn by the defendant, and it depicts a moment from my personal life. The prosecutor stood again, furious. Your Honor, this level of personal disclosure compromises the integrity of the trial. The defense could use this to— Sit down! The judge barked again, losing the last shred of composure he had fought to maintain. The courtroom went dead silent. Judge Hanley turned his gaze to the Joker. How did you know? The Joker didn't blink. You already know the answer to that. The judge's lips trembled. I put that night behind me. I locked it away. I moved on. And that child? The Joker asked softly. Did he move on too? A murmur spread through the room like a wave. The judge's eyes widened, and for the first time, he seemed genuinely afraid. That child, his voice faltered. That child is not involved in this trial. Joker tilted his head. Isn't he? A bead of sweat slid down the judge's temple. Something inside him was splintering. Everyone could see it. The prosecutor slammed his hand on the table. Your Honor, with all due respect, you need to excuse yourself from this case immediately. This is manipulation. This is coercion. The court cannot allow— Oh, let him finish, Joker murmured with a faint smile. Shut up, the prosecutor snapped. The Joker leaned forward slightly. You should be curious, counselor. After all, the child in the drawing grew up, became someone important, someone who made decisions, someone who pretended the past didn't exist. The judge's breath hitched. Stop, he whispered. Just stop. But the Joker continued, his voice dropping into a soft, unsettling calm. I didn't come here to ruin your life. If I wanted that, I would have brought a different picture, one with clearer faces. That one's still tucked away in my pocket, safe. The room erupted in whispers again. The judge's face twisted with panic. That's enough, the prosecutor shouted. Bailiffs, stop him from speaking. But the Joker only smiled deeper. You can't silence what already lives in his head. Clara, the timid assistant from earlier, slipped into the courtroom quietly. She sat in the back, her eyes widening as she surveyed the tension that pulsed through the room. Judge Hanley pressed trembling hands against the bench. Mr. Joker, what do you want? The Joker blinked once, slow and thoughtful. I want you to admit it. Admit what? That the system you protect, the Joker whispered, isn't justice. It's a fortress built to hide people like you. The judge staggered back in his seat as though struck. The prosecutor seized the moment. Your Honor, he insisted, this is absurd. This is emotional manipulation. The defendant is weaponizing personal trauma to derail— Trauma? Joker echoed, chuckling softly. The only trauma here is the one he caused. Judge Hanley's voice returned in a low, broken rasp. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I was young. I was lost. I never meant to— You don't get to finish that sentence, Joker said sharply. He never got to finish his childhood. The judge covered his face with both hands, shaking. The prosecutor stepped forward. Your Honor, please, remove yourself from the bench. Conflicts like this— The judge suddenly stood. You're right. The room froze. He breathed heavily, eyes red. I cannot preside over this trial, not if the defendant has knowledge of my past. He took a shaky step back, as if retreating from his own courtroom. I will recuse myself. A collective gasp rippled across the room. Joker leaned back, chains clinking softly. Good, he whispered. But then something unexpected happened. The judge didn't leave. He stepped forward instead, gripping the bench with both hands, staring directly at the Joker with a strange, desperate intensity. You know something else, he said, voice shaking. Something more than this drawing. You came here for a reason, didn't you? Joker's smile faded, not into sadness, not into humor, but into something far more unsettling. I didn't come for you, he said quietly. I came for the person who paid you to bury that incident. Judge Hanley froze. The prosecutor's eyes widened in horror. Clara covered her mouth, and the entire courtroom realized the real villain wasn't the judge. It was someone else sitting in that room. The courtroom didn't breathe. It didn't blink. It didn't move. The Joker's words hung in the air like a blade suspended by the thinnest thread, ready to drop on whoever it was meant for. Judge Hanley's face drained of what little color remained. "Someone paid me?" he whispered, confusion and dread clawing at his expression. No, I made my own choices." The Joker shook his head slowly, almost pitying him. "You made your choice that night, yes, but someone else made sure you never faced consequences for it." The prosecutor rose from his seat, his voice cracking with forced confidence. "Your Honor, you don't have to listen to this. He's crafting a narrative." "Oh, stop performing," Joker said, turning his head toward him with a lazy, precise gaze. "Everyone's tired of pretending you're oblivious." The prosecutor stiffened. Clara, sitting in the last row, leaned forward slightly. Her eyes darted anxiously between the two men, sensing the shift. Something deep, something dangerous. The judge swallowed hard. "Joker? Who?" Joker didn't answer. He let the silence stretch until the tension became unbearable. Then he slowly lifted his eyes and scanned the room, row by row, face by face, until his gaze landed on one man seated proudly in the front row of the gallery. A man in a dark suit. Smooth posture, cold confidence, eyes too calm for the chaos around him. The district attorney, Jonathan Creed. Creed had built an entire career on being the ruthless protector of justice. A man who boasted of cleaning up the city. A man who had shown up today to watch the Joker be crushed in court. His smirk faded under the Joker's stare. Judge Hanley followed the Joker's gaze, and when he saw where it landed, his knees nearly buckled. "Creed," he whispered. Creed rose slowly, smoothing his tie, masking the subtle tremor in his hands. "Your Honor," he said, voice measured, "I don't know what kind of game this clown is playing, but I refuse to be part of it." He points at the most powerful man in the room. "That doesn't make it truth. It makes it predictable." Joker laughed, a soft, humorless sound. "You know, that's your problem, Jonathan. You think power makes you invisible, but you forgot something important." Creed narrowed his eyes. "And what's that?" Joker leaned forward, chains rattling just enough to echo through the room. "I grew up in the same neighborhood as that kid in the drawing." A stir rippled through the audience. "I knew his family. I knew what happened to them. And I knew..." Joker's grin sharpened. "Who paid to rewrite the ending?" Creed's jaw clenched. "You have no proof." Joker ignored him, eyes locked on the judge. "Tell him, Your Honor. Tell them who came to your home that night, who told you the case would disappear if you kept your mouth shut." The judge stumbled back a step, horror widening his eyes. "No one came. No one..." He stopped. A memory surfaced. A knock at his door. A man in a dark suit, a hand on his shoulder. A promise, a threat. Sweat rolled down his temple. "Creed," he whispered. The district attorney lifted his chin. "That was years ago. You can't pin your guilt on me." "Oh, but he can," Joker said softly, "because the child wasn't the only one who saw what happened that night." Creed stiffened. The prosecutor frowned. "Who else?" And that was when the Joker turned his head toward the very back row, where Clara sat frozen. Clara blinked, confusion twisting her face. "Me? I don't know." Joker smiled kindly, almost sadly. "You do. You've known something was wrong your whole life. You just didn't have the courage to look at it closely." Clara shook her head. "No, I don't know anything about the judge's past." "Not the judge's past," Joker said quietly. "Yours." The room fell into an even deeper silence, a suffocating one. Clara's breathing accelerated. "What are you talking about?" Judge Hanley stared at her. "Miss Clara, what's your last name?" She spoke it carefully. "Clara Hanley." The judge's heart stopped. The prosecutor's face drained. Creed's expression cracked, and Joker whispered, "The child in the drawing didn't disappear. He grew up." Clara's eyes widened as her entire body trembled. No, that can't. You're saying you're his daughter," Joker finished. "And your father has been lying to you your entire life." A sob broke from Clara's throat. She stumbled backward, gripping the bench behind her. The judge reached out instinctively. "Clara, don't touch me," she cried. tears streaming. How could you hide something like that? Judge Hanley fell apart in front of everyone. His face crumpled, his voice cracked. I wanted to protect you. I thought it would disappear. I didn't know. Creed forced me to bury it. I was young, afraid. Enough, Joker said sharply, his tone snapping the room back into silence. This isn't about forgiveness. This is about truth. And truth, he added with a tilt of his head, has a habit of showing up, even when no one wants it. Creed made a sudden move toward the exit. The courtroom gasped. The bailiffs rushed in, but Joker only smiled. You can run, he said softly, but guilt always outruns you. The judge collapsed into his chair. Clara sank to the floor in tears. Creed was restrained by 2 guards as reporters swarmed forward. Through it all, the Joker sat calmly, expression unreadable. Someone shouted, "What do you want now?" He looked up, eyes gleaming with something deeper than madness. Nothing, he whispered. Justice already happened. The entire courtroom froze, not by law, not by verdict, not by force, but by truth. And as they dragged him out of the courtroom, Joker leaned toward a passing guard and whispered, "Heroes wear masks. Mine just happens to smile." Sometimes the truth doesn't explode in front of us. It slips in quietly, like a whisper that changes everything. And now, as the walls around these characters begin to crack, one thing is certain. The next chapter won't just reveal consequences. It will expose intentions no one was prepared to face. Stay tuned. The darkest turn is still ahead.